handcuffed by politics. Democracy held hostage. Democrats versus Republicans. Divided nation at pause. Future at stake. Get triggered by Wallet. Gridlock Podcast.
Well, hello America, and welcome to the second episode of Gridlock Podcast. And let me start by saying, anyone who tries to infringe upon the Constitution should be charged with treason. Because didn't every politician take the oath of office before getting into office? You know, the oath that says, "I do solemnly swear to support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic." I had to take that when I became a citizen. Well, when a politician publicly declares that the Constitution of the United States is old and outdated and a relic and should be changed, didn't he just betray the oath? Shouldn't he be impeached for violating the oath that he took? Because for the past 250 years, the Constitution is what kept our enemies at bay. 250 years, and now our enemies are employing sympathizers. Yes, to make you believe that the Constitution is old and you can't read it. In fact, they went as far as not teaching cursive in school anymore. So the future generation cannot decipher the Constitution. If they cannot read it, how would they know they need to defend it? Check this out.
The Constitution opens with the words, as trite as it sounds, "We the people." Well, it's time to remember that we the people are the government. You and I.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. Never ever had it meant we the people that you the government. If it meant it, it would have said we the government. It said we the people. We, your employer. We, your employer. The people of the United States, not the government of the United States. The people of it that get to tell you what to do. That's who you're working for. It's a service industry. As in, you serve us, not the other way around. It never said we the people, you and I, the government. It never said that. Now people are going to ask, are you going to question the government? Well, of course I'm going to question the government. If we weren't allowed to question the government, we'd still be a colony to the United Kingdom till today. Yes, we are allowed to question the government. This is our right. This is what made this country what it is. Well, politicians and governments like to herd masses. And that is you, of course. And they are well armed with an armada of evasive maneuvers to change the gameplay every step of the time. If the law of the land works in their favor, they will encourage you to support them and fight whoever is against them. This is Chuck Schumer embracing the law of the land. Check this out.
Mine is very simple. The ideologues in the Senate want to turn what the founding fathers called the cooling saucer of democracy into the rubber stamp of dictatorship. We will not let them. They want, because they can't get their way on every judge, to change the rules in midstream, to wash away 200 years of history. They want to make this country into a banana republic, where if you don't get your way, you change the rules. Are we going to let them? No! It'll be a doomsday for democracy if we do.
Really? Doomsday for democracy. He considers any deviation from the Constitution is an attack on democracy itself. This is what he just said. That was just a few years back. This is what he believed in, that any deviation from standard practice is attack on democracy, is doomsday for democracy. You, the masses, got herded behind Chuck Schumer. That any attack and deviation from standard practice is doomsday for democracy. Well, how funny when the table turns. Check this out.
As I said in my dear colleague earlier this week, if Republicans continue to hijack the rules of the chamber to prevent action on something as critical as protecting our democracy, then the Senate will debate and consider changes to the rules on or before January 17th, Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Over the course of history, Mr. President, the Senate has debated voting rights many times and done what was necessary to take action. But rarely did our predecessors face the sort of malice that now confronts our democracy from within. And one final point, the arguments from the other side, they're saying federalize the elections. That's in the Constitution, that federal elections can be determined by federal legislation. That's what some of our great post-Civil War amendments were all about. That's what the history of voting rights legislation has been about. When state legislatures, for reasons often bigoted and racist, said people couldn't vote for one reason or another or stopped them from voting, the Congress stepped in. That's nothing new. It's unbelievable, the arguments they come up with. Just totally false. Totally false. So as we hold this debate, I ask my colleagues to consider this question. If the right to vote is the cornerstone of our democracy, then how can we Democrats permit a situation in which Republicans can pass voter suppression laws at the state level with only a simple majority vote, but not allow the United States Senate to do the same? And I ask that of my Democratic colleagues, This asymmetry cannot hold. If Senate Republicans continue to abuse the filibuster to prevent this body from acting, then the Senate must adapt. The Senate always has. Robert C. Byrd, one of this chamber's great traditionalists, acknowledged that Senate rules that seemed appropriate in the past, quote, must be changed to reflect changed circumstances. Boy, oh boy, do we have changed circumstances now, with this abandonment of voting rights by the Republican Party and a willingness to let voters from one end of the country to the other be suppressed. As times change and circumstances evolve, the Senate must follow the suit of changed circumstances when necessary. So we're going to work towards that goal in the coming weeks. To downplay the threat against our democracy is dangerous. Dangerous. We have seen this in history forever. When people try to subvert democracy, when they use threats of violence to do so, if good people don't stand up, the democracy can wither. We cannot let that happen to our wonderful country. There is no better way to heal the damage of January 6th than to act so that our constitutional order is preserved for the future.
Well, there he is again. You just saw it. It's just a different narrative. That now the law of the land, the Constitution, does not work in their favor. So what is there to do? Rise against it. Rise against it. The Constitution. The same Constitution that he wanted to protect a few years back because of a filibuster. Now the filibuster is working against him. They are raising battle flags to rise against everyone and everything that will stand in their way, past, present, and future. Every day they try to rip a little bit of it. Every day they try to implement laws and legislations to take power from your hands until it's a complete totalitarian government. Complete totalitarian regime. You want to know what that's like? Well, let me fill you in before you get to repeat what we went through. Election year for Saddam Hussein in Iraq. You walk into the election poll and you have poll site coordinators. Some of them you've never met your entire life. They know you by name. They know you by face. You walk in like, look who it is. It's so-and-so. Come on in. And you're wondering like, how do you know me? I've never met you before. We know everything. Come here. here is the ballot, and here's where you vote yes. And they will stand right next to you until they see you vote yes, and show you where the ballot box is and walk you to put it in the ballot box so you don't switch it. And I know some of you snowflakes, self-proclaimed machos, they're gonna say, I'll vote no. Yeah, it's my right, it's my country, I'll vote no. You'll vote no? It's your right, it's your country? You have the illusion that you have a choice. Do you know what will happen to you if you vote no in a totalitarian regime? For those of you who can't handle facts and gruesome facts, time to pause and skip to this timeline. What I'm about to say is really, really gruesome. It's truth, but it's really, really gruesome. When you vote no, they will strap you naked to a table and throw your mom, your daughter, or your sister on top of you, and they will rape them on top of you. Do you think death is the best thing to happen to you? You are right. It's the trauma that you'll never recover from to the rest of your life. That's what happened to a totalitarian government and a regime. What happened over there can also happen over here. If you don't learn from history, you are doomed to repeat it. Do you think that country was always like that? Have you ever heard of the Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization? The first law to ever be written for mankind, 1750 BC. The first written language, 3500 BC. The same for the first university ever in the world was over there. That's what happened to them right now, because they never learned from history. You're about to repeat what that civilization went through. Our founding fathers saw what happened in the past with the countries that they left behind, and they didn't want to repeat that here. When you strip a nation from a way to stand up to tyranny, that could happen here. Convince them that the government always knows best. Do they? They never make mistakes? Convince them that the best protection you have from all harms is best to be left in the hands of the government and to their discretion. Really? Look, politicians never go after the source. Ever. They never go after the source. Not a single time they went after the source, because in their benefit to keep you chasing from one foot to the next, and they keep on changing the rules on you. I'll prove it to you that they never go after the source. Look what happened when they wanted to regulate assault style rifles. That's a rifle that's just like any other rifle, but being discriminated against because of its looks. What's an assault style rifle? It's a rifle that you can assault people with, and there are other rifles that you cannot assault people with. This is how dumb they think you are. They got you to march behind them and support that. Support that. The assault style rifle, the look, is what we banned. I thought we were all for equality and everything should look the same and treated the same. Why are we discriminating against this poor rifle that only looks assaulty? It looks dangerous. Didn't we learn not to judge things because they look dangerous? Isn't that why we're here now? Like today? Because we're judging things because they look dangerous. Assault style rifle. It's a .22 caliber rifle that works just like any other rifle. You pull trigger one time, it will fire one bullet. But it's the assault style that needs to be regulated. Well, they regulated the AR-15s and the assault style, military looking rifle, because if look could kill. This is what they got you believing, that the look would make it more assaulty than the other one. And they left the M1 Garands, they left the Mosin Nagants, and there are some calibers out there can put a hole in a man big enough that you can toss a cat through it. Those were left alone because they don't look assaulty. The assaulty looking guns, the bad ones is what they want to regulate. And they regulate it. Can you believe that? That you all marched and stood and voted for those politicians because of their assaulty looking rifles? Well, let's take another contrast. I'm trying to draw a contrast that to prove to you that they don't care about life savings. They don't want to save your life. They want to save the narrative. It's much more important. It means years in the chair, in the rule, in the government. That's what the narrative means to them, not your life. You can die 10,000 times and nothing will be done about your life. Yes, I do have data. I'll prove it to you. Over 5-year study, the most lethal vehicle to own in the United States, Ford truck F-Series. 10,000 people died in those vehicles. Have we regulated F-trucks? And how many can you buy? How fast can it go? How many tires can you put on it? How big of a tires can you put on it? Did we regulate that? No, we didn't. We didn't regulate that. There are safety standards, airbags, seatbelts, etc. Those we keep an eye on because it's an industry standard. But when 10,000 people die from the same cause, nobody will do a thing about it. Did they ban the sale of Ford trucks in New York or California because of the 10,000 people that died from those accidents riding a Ford truck? Not picking on Ford, it's followed by close seconds by Chevy Silverados. The data is out there, go Google it. Why do we always being pushed to support and uphold privileges over rights? Driver's license is a privilege. It means can be taken away from you, can be given to you and taken away from you. Right is a right. Nobody can take a right away. A right to own a gun is a protected amendment in the Constitution. So is your freedom of speech, that nobody should change that, right? Right to own a gun and carry it is protected by the Constitution. If you're an American, the American Constitution grants you the right to keep arms. It doesn't say. It says well-regulated militia. It doesn't just say go for hunting. It doesn't say for target practice. Because in other countries, when they stripped away the guns from them, the citizens couldn't stand up to their tyrannical government. Yes, I've seen it happen. They're gonna say, oh wait, people in Iraq don't have guns, don't have access to guns? Yeah, they did. Back then, during the Saddam days, they did have access to guns. But those people were well trustworthy that they will defend Saddam rather than stand up for him. The ones who stood up for him, they got gassed. You can go look it up. It's also available on Google for your entertainment. But here comes the fact that we regulated guns and gun ownership for safety to reduce gun crime. Did it work? Is it working? Cities with the most strict gun laws. New York City, 2021, 485 deaths from guns, up by 4%. Philadelphia, this one takes the cake. Philly, 486, up by 23%. Check this out. They say there is no wave of crime. Look at this.
I think it's important that we don't let this become mushy and bleed into the notion that there's some kind of a big spike in crime. There isn't. There is not a big spike in crime. That is not true. There is also not a big spike in violent crime. Neither one of these things is true.
There is no crime wave? What are you looking for? What should constitute a crime wave when it's up by 23%? People being killed by a gun in the city of Baltimore. Okay, 337. 726 are non-fatal. Chicago, God, I hope if Lori Lightfoot is watching this right now, 812 got killed by a gun. One of the most difficult places to get a gun license is Chicago. Concealed carry permits almost impossible to come by in Chicago. Up by 5.5%. I'm going to put this in perspective for you. Okay? I'm going to put this in perspective for you, and let's hope to God that you can get it. You have a business, and I'm managing that business for you. And I come and tell you, well, we have a plan to reduce our expenditures on energy, and we're going to turn off all the lights in the building. And you're going to be like, how much did we save? And I'm going to be, well, our energy bills went up by 10%. Are you going to buy that? Aren't you going to tell me, are you insane? How did you save me spending by increasing my electric bill by 10%? All right, let's say that you do have a lot of waste in the company, about $100,000 worth. And I'm going to come up to you with a plan. Like, I implemented this business plan by hiring the secondary outside agency to save us $100,000 a year on waste. Great. As a business owner, I'm going to ask you, how much was that? And you're going to tell me, well, it cost $130,000 a year. Does that make sense to you? Your own business, does that make sense to you? Ever? That I am implementing these practices to save you money, and it will cost you more money in the end? Do you buy that? Do you buy that? Are you that naive that you would buy that? Let's take another example. You use office supplies by whatever number a month. And I'm going to come up to you. I'm like, hey, I'm a private contractor. I see that you use office supplies. I can reduce your office supplies by $200 a month for a fee. I'm like, oh, that's great. You can save me all those expenses. You can save some of my waste, of my spending. You can save some of that by $200 a month. Seems like a good deal. What is the fee? Be like, it's $250 a month. What did you do? What did you do? You went to exchange $1 for coins. And you ended up getting 50 cents instead. Instead of 4 quarters, they give you 2. This is what you changed. They never go after the source. They always go after the agenda, after the narrative. Why? Because sometimes you, as a smelly working class, don't need to know the source. It doesn't do them any good. Why? Because according to the FBI, 70% of people who committed gun violence, 70%. It's more than half. It's a lot more than half. Go get a calculator. See if 70% is more than half or not. 70% of gun violence, people with gun violence tendencies, and they have murdered people, are on psychiatric medications, or they have some sort of psychiatric disorder. I'm not blaming. Look, I'm not a politician. I'm not going to blame the psychiatric people. I'm going to blame the big pharma, the big pharmaceutical companies. Created a medicine to treat your depression with the off chance of you offing yourself. You're going to treat depression. What is the side effect? Possible suicidal tendencies or possible homicidal tendencies. You treated depression with that? Weren't you better off just being depressed? Now you're happy, but you're willing to take out 20 to 30 people. Never look at the gun. They always tell you, look, if they didn't have that gun, they wouldn't have killed anybody. Nobody ever dies in America except with a gun. Nobody dies around the world, get murdered except with a gun. Hammers, box cutters, cars, poisoning. Nobody. The gun, what did it? Not the person pulling the trigger. Can you imagine if we canceled airlines and airplanes after the first 2 aircraft crashes? What would happen to the world now? That one we're keeping because politicians need those aircrafts. That one we do need. But your right to the Constitution, granted amendment, you don't need that. You don't need that. They don't believe in that stuff. It is called the Bill of Rights, not Bill of Privileges. It is called the Bill of Rights and not Bill of Privileges. Rights never change. Privileges can be given to you and taken away from you. Give you an example. Boyfriend, girlfriend, disorderly conduct. Okay? They get into a fight. She gets so upset, wrapped up in her emotions. She tried to hit him with a car. She runs over his foot and she get arrested, and she will go to court and spend possibly jail time, anger management, civil service duties. Okay? And she can apply after she get done with all of that and get her license back. There is a chance. It happens every day in America. Okay? It happens every day in America. There is a chance she can get her license back. But in some states, if you defend your home with a gun, the cops will be there knocking on your door, taking every gun you have away. Now you're going to say, well, they should have called 911. Well, how fast a cop car can travel versus a bullet? What would stop the threat quicker? A cop traveling down the road coming from the next precinct? Or you having the means to defend your family and your home and your safety and your life? And look, driving license is a privilege. You can get it back. Owning a gun, it's not a privilege, fellas. It's a right protected by the Constitution. Making laws to reduce gun crime is just rhetoric. It's a catchy slogan for campaigns. It's useless. It is useless to create gun laws to control gun crime. Is the gun committing the crime or the criminal? Are we making it harder for criminals to commit crime? Is the goal, that we make it harder for criminals to commit crimes? Are you naive? Because only a naive person would think that gun laws would reduce gun crime. Duh! Since when? Criminals care about what's legal and what's illegal to kill people with. Since when? And who will end up following these laws other than the law-abiding citizen? Do you think criminals are going to be like, oh, damn it, now it's illegal to kill people with a 12-round magazine? Creating laws for law-abiding citizens is the equivalent of reducing drunk driving incidents by making it harder for sober people to obtain driver license. You want to reduce drunk driving incidents? Make it harder for sober people to get license. Never go after the source. They never do that. Look at them. One act after another. They never do that. It's a wild world out there. And what's super stupid about that there are people you know for sure. Look, does everyone should have a gun? Okay? Should we leave the door open for everyone to have a gun without any checks or balances? No. We need to look into people before we give them something that they can kill people with faster and more conveniently. We should look into that. Are you a criminal? Are you a bad person? Do you have the wrong ties? Do you have psychological disorders that you can't control yourself sometimes? Do you have anger tendencies? We need to look into that. Absolutely we do. But we are not that hard on giving people driver's license. How many times you've been on the road and you've seen some people, they shouldn't be allowed to operate a toilet without supervision, not a car on a public freeway. You've seen it day in and day out. You've seen all of that. You've seen all these idiots behind the wheel. They have no regard to the law.
Police have identified the driver of this SUV who plowed into a crowd at a holiday parade in Waukesha, Wisconsin, as 39-year-old Daryl Brooks of Milwaukee. Police say he was fleeing a domestic disturbance and that he acted alone.
There's no evidence that this is a terrorist incident.
In a Christmas parade. Nobody will call that person the guy that intentionally drove through the Christmas parade and killed a bunch of people. They will call him a vehicle. They will never address him by the name. doesn't fit the narrative. First, he wasn't Caucasian. Second, most of the victims were Caucasians. It doesn't matter. You become a vehicle now. You become a Decepticon. You're no longer a human being. You're an Autobot. You're gonna transform into something else, and now it's the vehicle that killed people. Never go after the source. Not the guy that shouldn't be on the road, that got out on a bail for like $1,000, something stupid like that, and ran over a bunch of innocent people wanted to celebrate Christmas. The vehicle that ran over the Christmas parade. That guy becomes a vehicle. But if it was Kyle Rittenhouse, a Caucasian, trying to defend his life, that will become a white supremacist. What is the definition of terrorism in your mind? How would you define terrorism?
How would you define terrorism, Mr. Graber?
I think that's your job, sir.
The current definition is any individual or group that uses violence to achieve a political goal.
Does this count as terrorism?
Police unleash force in a country gone to hell. A loaded assault rifle snatched by a private guard at gunpoint as officers are dangerously outnumbered, surrounded.
Officers being chased by the group here.
Their cars on fire. Looters take over. As Saturday night anarchy reigns through America. This is Beverly Hills. High-end stores looted, famous shopping centre The Grove cleaned out. And burning. Fairfax near Hollywood a battleground. LA has survived a history of race riots. It's in one again.
It's one of our darkest days when I saw it last, and it's repeating.
This time it's nationwide. New York, under siege.
Leave them alone! Don't get out of here!
What about this? Does this count as terrorism?
Violence, fires, property damage, hand-to-hand combat at protests across the country.
Explain to me the reasoning behind fighting.
You have to make it so unpalatable to be doing white supremacist organizing that they no longer want to do that. And historically, that's what's worked. You have to put your body in the way, and you have to make it speak in a language that they understand, and sometimes that is violence.
Prosecutors say they were wearing masks covered head to toe in black, a tactic the Antifa call black bloc.
People dress in black bloc for a few things. One,
Scott Crow has been leading anarchist and militant leftist groups for decades.
So people put on the masks so that we can all become anonymous. And then therefore we are able to move more freely and do what we need to do, whether it is illegal or not.
So some people will push back on that and say that the black bloc is to keep people from being identified and arrested when they break the law, when they commit crimes.
Damn right. It's a good way to avoid the ramifications of law enforcement.
No, it doesn't. Look at the contrast. Check this out.
Strategic and symbolic defeat, both for Iraq's government and for the United States, which had spent billions of dollars training the Iraqi army and had withdrawn its own troops some 2.5 years earlier.
The U.S. fought a nearly decade-long war, costing thousands of American lives and $1 trillion.
As buildings burn, the National Guard
now,
moving into
Iraqi
American
army,
streets.
backed by a US-led
Not just
coalition,
the big cities, even
is preparing an
Ohio is under
offensive to take
attack.
the city back.
A local with a bow and
ISIS
arrow.
is buckling down. But
American?
according to American and Iraqi officials, ISIS has...
Would you look at that? How magical. Does this draw the contrast of what's going on here? That some of this is not actually peaceful protesting? Some people have the right to protest. I'm all for that. You don't like what the government's doing? Go stand in front of the building. Don't block the road, God forbid. Don't torch the garbage. Don't steal. Don't rob the Nike store. Look, even in their rhetoric, when they tell you to protest, stand up for power, stand up for cops, stand up for law enforcement. Well, you have every right to do that. Every person in America, from the chef to chief, from the president all the way down to the last unemployed person, the last child in America, should support your right if you don't like what the police are doing, if you don't like what the government is doing, if you don't like what any public official is doing. You should have that right. You should protest. Your voice should be heard freely and without consequences. But robbing the Target store and burning it down to the ground, did George Floyd deserve to die? No, he didn't. George Floyd did not deserve to die. I'm going to go on the record, going to repeat it a second time in case someone wants to cut to this clip. George Floyd did not deserve to die. He was being arrested for a suspected violation, crime, whatever. The Constitution gives him that right, that he should remain alive and not executed and not killed and not mishandled like how he was mishandled. Did it or did it not lead to the end of his life? It is not relevant. Was he just going to get paralyzed because of it? It's not relevant. Was he going to have a scar on his forehead because of it? It is not relevant. He shouldn't have died at the hands of those cops. He shouldn't have. He should have had a right to fair trial, just like what the Constitution said. He should have stood his ground and pointed at the cops that hurt him. He didn't get a chance to do that. George Floyd did not deserve to die. His death was not justifiable, despite what he have allegedly done. His death was not justifiable. Burning down Target was. Robbing the Nike store was. Destroying homes and businesses owned by families in your own community. Those people have grocery stores, bodegas, gas stations. They live and work amongst you. They provide services to you. So in the grocery store that you're going to march down and riot and burn down to the ground, when it burns down to the ground, where are you going to get bread from? You're going to ride to the next town over. Keep doing that.
I am now talking to the black people in the room. We attempted to really start seeing things from the perspective of a famous villain from a Marvel Cinematic Universe. Who's seen Black Panther? Raise your hand. I went to see Black Panther with my white woke friend, Mark Thompson. After the film, I told him, bro, I know it's a comic book, but I just want you to know that you've been privy to a very in-house discussion. For us as black people, what is the appropriate response to the slave trade, to slave cropping, to Jim Crow? This is a real conversation. This happens a lot. And many of us agree with this man. His rhetoric sounds like he wants justice, but in his actions, he wants revenge. And hatred can't be focused. Once hatred is allowed to roam, it goes wherever it pleases. You cannot weaponize your bitterness for the greater good. That's not how bitterness works.
But my point is, if I have a license to drive in New York, I can drive to any state without having to obtain reciprocity from that state. And that's a privilege to have a driver's license, not a right. If I have that privilege, I can carry over. I don't even need to ask for permission. But I can't do that when I have a license to carry a gun. If I have a license in New York State, why can't I carry in California? It's my rights protected by the Constitution. Why can't I carry in California? Am I only American in my state of residence? Where I reside, I'm only American there? What if I tell you your right to free speech is only in your own state? Your right to free speech, First Amendment, you can only have that if you're in your own state. If you cross over, you don't have right to free speech. What would you do? What would you do? Criminals are going to love this one. What if I tell you you must obtain a license to plead the Fifth? You know, your Fifth Amendment, the right not to incriminate yourself in a legal proceeding. How would you like that? Not a single element of the Constitution is more important than the next. The whole Constitution is important altogether. What our enemies hate is our Constitution. It's a successful experiment that started with our founding fathers. They don't want that narrative to get down to their citizens in those countries. But if I tell you need a license to plead the fifth, you're probably gonna protest that, huh? And get yourself some new Nike shoes when you break the glass to that store. Lives can get lost. Over 100,000 deaths from overdoses in 2021, up 28% from 2020. 100,000. It's an unrelated note, right? But open borders, hopes, and lucid dreams must continue. 100,000 died. Nobody's lifting a finger. DEA seized 15,000 pounds of fentanyl in 2021, up 1,066%, according to CNN. Where did it come from? Where did it come from? We have 4 main borders. To the east, we have Europe. To the west, we have Asia. To the north, we have Canada. And to the south, we have South America. Where did all this fentanyl come from? Give you a hint. Asia and Europe is not the main problem. It's a problem, but it's not the main problem. Asia and Europe, not the main problem with our 4 main borders. Flip a coin. You'll have a 50% chance to come up with the right answer. But the teachers' union can vote on canceling schools in Chicago. Alright? If you cancel schools, you shouldn't get paid, in my opinion. Look, I'm not picking on teachers or educators. I come from a family of teachers and educators. My late father, God bless his soul, he was a university professor. His whole life, his entire career, he was a college professor. They taught me how to respect teachers. They taught me how to respect the educational system. Sometimes teachers and educators get subjected to what's the worst that society can offer, and they have to take that back home to their families. They get to live that. Children getting abused, they're hungry, they don't have enough money, they're living a terrible home environment. Teachers have to deal with that. It's not part of the job. It's not part of the job. They're there to teach, but they're gonna have to deal with that on a humanitarian level. When a teachers union cancels schools, what do you think gonna happen to those children that cannot go to school? Because their blue-collar families still have to go to work to put food on the table. They have to go to work to pay for the school tax. I think they should reimburse the parents for the cost of daycare. If I have to work 8 to 4, if I work at a bank or a clinic or whatever, okay, and my child should have been in school, but now he's home and somebody has to watch him and I have to pay for that, the school's union, the teachers' union should pay me. They should reimburse me. And they should prorate my home school tax for that year. Look, George Carlin tried to warn us back in 2006 that this is happening and nobody's paying attention to it. He tried to warn us. Nobody paid attention. The comedian George Carlin, in my opinion, the philosopher of the 21st century. Look at this.
There's a reason for this. There's a reason education sucks, and it's the same reason that it will never, ever, ever be fixed. It's never going to get any better. Don't look for it. Be happy with what you got. Because the owners of this country don't want that. I'm talking about the real owners now. The real owners, the big wealthy business interests that control things and make all the important decisions. Forget the politicians. The politicians are put there to give you the idea that you have freedom of choice. You don't. You have no choice. You have owners. They own you. They own everything. They own all the important land. They own and control the corporations. They've long since bought and paid for the Senate, the Congress, the state houses, the city halls. They got the judges in their back pockets. And they own all the big media companies, so they control just about all of the news and information you get to hear. They got you by the balls. They spend billions of dollars every year lobbying to get what they want. Well, we know what they want. They want more for themselves and less for everybody else. But I'll tell you what they don't want. They don't want a population of citizens capable of critical thinking. They don't want well-informed, well-educated people capable of critical thinking. They're not interested in that. That doesn't help them. That's against their interest. That's right. You know what they want? They want obedient workers. Obedient workers. People who are just smart enough to run the machines and do the paperwork and just dumb enough to passively accept all these increasingly shittier jobs with the lower pay, the longer hours, the reduced benefits, the end of overtime, and the vanishing pension that disappears the minute you go to collect it. And now they're coming for your Social Security money. They want your fucking retirement money. They want it back so they can give it to their criminal friends on Wall Street. And you know something? They'll get it. They'll get it all from you sooner or later because they own this fucking place. It's a big club, and you ain't in it. You and I are not in the big club. And by the way, it's the same big club they use to beat you over the head with all day long when they tell you what to believe. All day long, beating you over the head in their media, telling you what to believe, what to think, and what to buy. The table is tilted, folks. The game is rigged. And nobody seems to notice. Nobody seems to care. Good, honest, hard-working people, white collar, blue collar, doesn't matter what color shirt you have on. Good, honest, hard-working people continue. These are people of modest means. Continue to elect these rich suckers who don't give a them. They don't give a about you. They don't care about you at all. At all. At all. Yeah. You know? And nobody seems to notice, nobody seems to care. That's what the owners count on, the fact that Americans will probably remain willfully ignorant.
It's a big club, and you ain't in it. Every 10 to 20 years, the owners of this country give us a new group to hate. We did that to the Scottish and Irish, along with the African American. The original slaves, Irish, Scottish, African Americans. In World War I and II, they gave us the Germans and the Japanese to hate. And then they gave us the African American, Part 2, the sequel. Let's hate them again. Then they gave us the Vietnamese to hate. Even though that our war wasn't with the citizen of Vietnam against the army of Vietnam. Then they gave us the gay and trans community to hate. Then they gave us Arabs to hate. Which is funny. Any bad person shouldn't be labeled with a country. A bad person is a bad person, we know that. We shouldn't label them by color. We shouldn't label them by name. We shouldn't label them by community, culture, religion. We know that by now. We came a long way. But the 9/11 attackers, out of the 19, 15 were Saudis from Saudi Arabia. I understand they weren't operating from Saudi Arabia. But did you see Operation Liberation of Saudi Arabia? Or Operation Saudi Freedom? Did you see that on TV? Were we over there toppling their kingdom and all of that and pulling statues off the ground? No, you didn't. We went after the source. That was a good example that we went after the source. But we also went after Iraq. None of the attackers of 9/11 were from Iraq. Look, my life was saved by the United States military. I was kidnapped in Baghdad. I was held by insurgents as a captive, as a hostage. I was a British citizen at the time. And they wanted to take me to a place where they're gonna remove my head on YouTube demanding things from the British government. Who saved my life? A Marine saved my life. A United States Marine saved my life. I am alive today because of the Marines. I'm not picking on anyone. They keep on changing the narrative. Over a year ago, just over a year ago, first responders felt appreciated during the pandemic. I'm a first responder. This is what I do. Nurses, medics, EMTs, law enforcement, firefighters. Heroes work here. Signs were put up everywhere. We felt so warm and fuzzy. We knew it wasn't gonna last. And until the owners of this country pointed their fingers at the next group that we should hate. They gave us the cops to hate. Remember in kindergarten, elementary school, when we show a picture of a hero to the kids when they're learning? What does a hero look like? You know, we give them examples. Oh, Superman or Spider-Man or whatever. Then we show them a picture of real life heroes. We put a cop A firefighter, a nurse, a doctor, a teacher, a builder, those are everyday heroes. They carried the nation on their backs during the pandemic. They gave us the cops to hate. If the rats want to feed on grain, it is in their best interest not to have any eagles nearby, anywhere nearby. And only a person with a criminal intent would love nothing more than to abolish law enforcement. Yes, I said it. Go cry. So who's the next group that's going to be served on a silver platter to the masses to feed on their carcasses? Who knows? Veterans? Are veterans next going to be served on a silver platter to be hated and eaten by the masses? You know, like how the Vietnam veterans came back after being drafted and recruited, and the sorry welcome that they received when they returned back to their homeland. When they came back from Vietnam, people spitting on them, treating them like war criminals. Those soldiers were defending their country. That's why they signed up. What's next, America? If you're a female and you used your pepper spray to fend off a rapist, we should make laws to make it harder for you to carry pepper spray. Does that make sense to you? But no, we can't discuss those things. Stop being retro. We got more important things at hand. We gotta vaccinate everyone. We need to vaccinate everyone. That's the whole narrative now, that we need to vaccinate everyone. I have a problem believing in anything that's not grounded in science, that's not grounded in reality, not grounded in facts. I did take the vaccine. I'm a pro-vaccine. I wish if everyone would get vaccinated. But I'm also pro-Constitution. In America, you have the right not to take a medicine. And we all should stand up by your right not to take that medicine. You know those heroes that I was talking about? The nurses, the firefighters, law enforcement? Well, their jobs are being threatened by record numbers.
Took to the streets Friday to protest the California COVID-19
They weren't heroes
mandate.
anymore.
The mandate announced
All of a sudden, getting Molotov cocktails 6 months later. We knew that was going to happen. We knew that was going to happen. This is what got reduced down to. This became the main focus. Everything important that needed to be sorted through was fixed and taken care of and gone. Supply chain issues. That disappeared. Electric vehicles. That became the new fad right now. They don't want to tell you what's going on. Look, man, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, and I hate blowing the horn on something that's not grounded in facts. I don't like that. But they don't want to tell you that if the demand remains the same, we may run out of petroleum by 2050. Yes, 2050. But if the demand increases, we're likely to run out of oil by 2035 or 2040. But the supply chain issue, they want to blame it on the union for not working 24/7. They wanted to blame it on the shoremen at every port that they're not working 24/7. That's why we have supply chain issues. Well, the port of Long Beach is the second biggest port in America. It's ahead of New York and New Jersey, and it's behind the port of LA. It's the second biggest port in America. Over 16 tons of goods and products come through it. 340,000 employees. About 100 billion in cargo annually. You know it's not owned by the city of Long Beach. You know it's not owned by the state of California either. It's not even owned by the United States. In the late 80s, it was sold to OOIL, Overseas Orient International Limited, a company from Hong Kong, and we had a mutual understanding and mutual benefit because it was a colony to the United Kingdom and our economic prosperity was well preserved. The OOIL spent the next 3 decades spending millions of dollars to improve it and expand it, but on July of 2017, Chinese-controlled company Costco, C-O-S-C-O, not the box store, Costco, it's a shipping company, bought 75% of OOIL. It effectively made China the new owner of Port Long Beach. We saw it at the time that it's a threat to our security. and the United States forced the sale of the port to the Macquarie Consortium. It's an Australian company, bought it in 2019. China also bought the port of Hambantota in Sri Lanka, the port of Darwin and Melbourne in Australia, Freeport in the Bahamas. It's under the Belt and Road Initiative. That's what they called it, which is the new Silk Road. But this is what China ended up owning in 10 years. The quickest way to control the maritime shipping industry is through China, through the port of Singapore, which is they already own, through the port of Hambantota in Sri Lanka, they own that, through the east coast of Africa, which is they own ports in Sudan and Djibouti and Somalia, and they own the ports in Yemen, Eden and Mocha. Then they can travel through the Red Sea, and they have invested billions of dollars in the Suez Canal by Egypt, then right into the Mediterranean, the port of Comport by Turkey, and all the way down to the pearl of the Mediterranean, the port of Piraeus. They own the port of Piraeus. They have leases on most of these ports. They don't own it forever. Leases between 30 years and 99 years, which give them access to the area surrounding that. And it gives them complete oversight on hiring, if they want, only Chinese nationals. If they wanted to staff it with just Chinese nationals. But if you watch what I just told you, this happened all in 10 years. All in 10 years. So the shortage in the supply chain is not really caused by American citizens. It's caused by another government. They don't want you to look at that. Go verify everything that I told you. Unless you're just sitting down and doing nothing. By the way, if you're sitting down and doing nothing, be careful. You may get arrested for impersonating a Democrat politician. Thank you all. See you later. See you next week. I hope I triggered the rest of you to do one of two things. Either rise against me, which is you're just following the system, or Google some of the stuff that I told you. Stop being a sheep. Defend this country. This is the Alamo. Right now, this is the Alamo. Please like and follow and let me know in your comments. Thank you. This is Gridlock Podcast.